feel like it's been a while since I've done a video. I'm sorry for the constant ringing noise. I don't know how to stop it, but I've seen a lot of different reactions towards the ending of SummerSlam 2023 of last Saturday. And a lot of reaction is primarily negative. People think that the Bloodline story really has nowhere to go. They're jumping the shark in terms, and people think that Jimmy turning on Jay doesn't make any sense. I'm here to retort that. I'm here to kind of explain the idea and explain the reasoning why Jimmy turning on Jay is actually the best thing to happen to the Bloodline storyline. So, I went into detail on this a long time ago, and I talked about on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, at TheKidMod13, I talk about a lot of things wrestling, and my page is insane. People I follow too. But I said this in a tweet on May 27th. The layers of the Bloodline story continue to grow, and today was a clear start to part 6. To me, so far, there's 6 parts to the Bloodline story. It started at Clash of Champions 2020, where Roman faced off against Jay, and Roman beat the absolute shit out of Jay, where Jimmy jumped in and he threw in the towel. Right after that, there's part 2. Jimmy and Jay fall in line in 2021. That's when they said they're going to join, they're going to jump in. Jay was the first to fall in, and Jimmy joined in when he got healthy. And then part 3, all the gold. Not only does Roman win the WWE and Universal Championship, but Jimmy and Jay win the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Then there's expansion, number 4, part 4. Not only does Sami Zayn join, but they also add in Solo Sikoa to the already growing family. The expansion continues all the way up until the Royal Rumble, where there is part 5, the beginning of a fracture. Well, technically, part 5, the beginning of a fracture, really begins when Sami and Jimmy start getting really close, and Jay starts to get bitter. And by the time part 5 begins, we're really seeing just how tight this story really is growing, and how the fracture is growing within than it is on the outside. Part 5 is really what Survivor Series was. The beginning of the fracture. Not only did Jay start to embrace Sami, but he started to grow apart from his brother Jimmy, which leads into part 6, a broken family. Once Sami turns on Roman, the family starts to break just a little bit. It starts to break from within. It started with the chair shot at Royal Rumble, Jay walking away, and then Jimmy lining himself up with Roman, Solo, and Paul with the Bloodline. Then Jay falls back in line, but then Jimmy and Jay lose the tag titles. This is where the family starts to get a little more broken from within, because Roman now seats his eyes on the tag titles, and which Jimmy and Jay knew that was theirs from the very beginning. And once Jimmy kicks Roman, the family breaks even more. And more as they break, they really start to grow a divide. When Jay breaks away from the Bloodline himself, after 3 years, the family breaks even more. The twins go, but Solo stays. But now, Solo has his doubts. Because Roman, it's all about following the status quo and doing whatever he can to retain and have his tribal chiefism and be the undisputed Universal Champion by any means necessary. If it means taking out his own family, he'll do it. Just like he did at Clash of Champions, Hell in a Cell. And even as the later years go by, and he even exiles Jimmy and Jay from the tag title picture to insert himself into the tag title picture with the Solo Sikoa. But now with the spear, with Roman hitting the spear, it's more of a break. And now we're almost in the part 7. And part 7 is where really I am very much interested to see. Part 7 is hidden for now. But I really want to get into the idea of why Jimmy turning was the best decision that WWE probably have ever done in its history in terms of heel turns. This is one of, if not, I believe this is the best heel turn I could ever have watched. And this is the best heel turn, perhaps maybe in the history of wrestling. Shit, I don't want to delete it. Change the game reply. Okay. I got it from another play. So I went into a thread at 10:39 the day after, and I said this: what a match it was. It wasn't the best Roman title defense, but what it lacked in ring was made up for it in storytelling. Now, what I mean is, not every Bloodline match has to be the best in-ring match on the card, on any card. It has been the best in-ring match on the card, on any particular card over the last several months. From, let's see, I think continuing from WrestleMania, from SummerSlam all the way to Night of Champions. I think WrestleMania all the way, from SummerSlam last year, 2022, all the way to not Night of Champions, but Money in the Bank this year. The Bloodline matches have been the best on the card, but sometimes the Bloodline matches aren't always the best on the card. Take, for instance, WrestleMania 38, Night 1 and Night 2. And you also consider many people didn't really understand the Hell in a Cell match. I loved the Hell in a Cell match from 2020. I also loved the Clash of Champions match from 2020 as well. There were some title defenses that Roman had, I think, in 2021. I'm trying to think. Finn Balor wasn't the best one, but it was really good, in my opinion. I think in what it told for, even in the hindsight of, okay, Roman is still, well, no matter what, he can conquer any demon. And that's something. But overall, like, people think that the Bloodline matches need to be the standard of a show. They need to be the highlight of the in-ring competition. It didn't need all the brutality. It didn't need all the weapons and everything. It needed emotion. It needed storytelling. It needed something that was compelling, different. It was different. It was compelling, and now it gives us. It gives into what Chapter 6, in my opinion, of what the story is in. A broken family. From within, since after WrestleMania and into Night of Champions of this year, the family began to break from outside and in. It started with Jimmy taking the mistreatment of Roman after the title loss in Night 1, and continued into Roman berating him, and then the kick. And the family began to break more as Jay, not knowing what to do, stuck to his morals until he got out. But think of it like this, and I start to really, really dive into the entirety of this turn, and I really detail it like this. Jimmy rides and dies for his brother until the end. But when Jay said, "You out" to him first, what did it make him feel? What did that make him feel on the inside? From the beginning of the storyline in 2020, Jimmy had always wanted to do right for Jay. However, Jay never thought otherwise of what it was emotionally doing to Jimmy. The plot thing is, when you think of it in hindsight in 2020, in the present day, is Jimmy wanted to do what was best at Night of Champions. He always did, but Jay never really knew. Now to think of this, Jimmy is in a hospital bed, laying as Jay continues to thrive while Jimmy sits just like this, just like he did in 2020, recovering from his knee injury from WrestleMania. His brother's getting all the big opportunities and doing his thing, while he has to swallow the pill of being second. Because he never really wanted to be second. He never been second. He's always been number one. Like I said, prom king, number one guy in high school, Jay said. So Jimmy turns on him. Not for Roman or the Bloodline or the family, but for his own 3-year struggle. And that's not adding in Jay just leaving up Jimmy for Sammy. That's a bonus factor. That to Jimmy was, how could you be my brother but you done joined up with someone not blood? it all makes sense. And I'm saying it like this. Jimmy always wanted to protect his brother Jay from himself. Because he know if Jay does anything crazy, he can't control himself afterwards. And Jimmy has to step in. So the reason why Jimmy stepped in and cost his brother Jay the Universal title is because he knew Jay wouldn't probably know what to do as a tribal chief. Jay wouldn't know how to control himself if his emotions get all in the world. And he wouldn't know what to do, and he had to rely on his brother Jimmy. But not only that, joining up with Sammy after first Jimmy brought him in. Jimmy said that this was a good idea. Jay hated the idea. His emotions was getting the best of him. Then Jay decided, you know what, he's cool. And started really hanging around him more and more and more. As more time goes on, Jimmy starts to get from a little distant from his brother Jay. Because Jay is starting to grow more tight with Sammy. See? Think about it. Not to mention the fact that even while injured, Jay was still getting the big spotlight. And when Jimmy came back, it was still about Jey Uso. It was always about Jay. He was always the right-hand man. Jimmy never really was anything but just another Uso. Another member of the another member of the NYE family that's just falling into Roman Reigns. He's not Solo Sikoa. He's not Paul Heyman. He wasn't even Jey Uso. He wasn't even Sami Zayn. He was just another guy that was just particularly... He was just another family member at this point. So there's a lot of like key things to Jimmy turning on Jay. There's a lot of deep stuff to the reasons why Jimmy turned on Jay and why Jimmy cost Jay the Undisputed Universal title. And also in an interview, they said that they wanted to feud against each other. And this is the perfect way to start the feud. This is a perfect way to really start what could be the rivalry of 2024 with the way that they probably can set this up. Because I don't think they're going to put them in a match right away at Payback. No. I think this has to build up. And if they do it at Payback, they got to really do it. They got to do it in a really, really good way. I won't be really tuned in unless it's like a really good reason. And like it has a really proper build. So far, it's not built up just yet. I say save their match for WrestleMania. If anything, even save their match for Survivor Series. But in all cases, you can really build this up for the next, I think, 8 months up to the next year. Because this has that much potential to be the best rivalry, brother versus brother rivalry in history. And that's even including the Hardys and... excuse me. That's even including, like, you know, Hardys going at each other and, you know, and all the other brother rivalries out there in the world. Probably not the Dudleys, but not the Undertaker and Kane, but, you know, that stuff. This has some real good potential, and I can like this. Now, I think for the sake of this, there's going to be... I think for the sake of it, for a lot of people overreacting is thinking like there's no legitimate reason. There's been reason for quite a long time. There's been reason for several years. It's just people are forgetting so many arcs of the story because this has been going on for a long, long time. This has been going on for 3 years. This has been going on for 3 years. People forget all the layers. People forget all the details. But I never forgot about that. I never forgot about them because I've been watching this. I've been watching all throughout these 3 years and paying attention to all the details, all the stories, all the arcs, all the lanes and twists and turns. I've been paying attention to all that for quite a long time. I never forgot about it, and I always thought, you know what, if it comes down to it, if they do, like, if they really build on the storyline of when, you know, Jay comes back and goes after the title, Jimmy has to find a way to get himself a heel, as a heel, or somebody, or someone has to, like, really get into being a heel. For the match itself, I thought the match Tribal Combat was really good. I thought it was a really good match. Was it better than Seth versus Finn? No. Was it better than even the women's triple threat? No. Was it better than the the opening match between Logan and Ricochet? No. But it was, in terms of story, a really good match. It was a perfect match. It built up on emotion. It built up on the turmoil of the family. And now, exiting out of the Uso arc, after we exit out of the Zayn arc, we now enter into the Solo arc. He just realized that in the end, no matter what Blood says, Roman's going to do what Roman has to do to be head of the table. I said this very early. It don't matter if he kills his own family, he will do it to be tribal chief. The spirit woke him up to what Jay had been saying all along. He's going to use you to stay on top like he did me. The slightest hesitation builds to the continuing divide that the family once bonded by blood is now on the verge of being disbanded by greed and poison. And it really is coming together. A chief with no tribe. The words of Cody Rhodes to Roman Reigns before WrestleMania. It'll all end the way it should have. 3 years ago, Roman Reigns returned and won the Universal Championship in shocking fashion at Payback, beginning this storyline. 3 years later, the Bloodline is still hitting on all strides and by far hasn't reached a full end, and it won't until WrestleMania in Philadelphia. Heyman was right. We really are in the third inning, boy. We really are in the third inning. And by that, I mean they really haven't hit all the things that they want to hit. And so far, they've hit on 3 things. 1, the growing of the family. 2, the little fractures, starting with Sammy. And now 3, it's the Usos. 4, I believe, will now see the whole family come together in a way to really start to, blow off this rivalry. To blow off this thing. Not blow off the Bloodline story, but to really blow off the Usos story more so than anything. And also, push them away completely. So that way you can begin, number 5, the Solo arc. And then 6 through 9, I believe, will be Roman Reigns, a chief with no tribe. There's nobody around him to protect him. Nobody around him to hold him to hold him up. Nobody around him to have his back. Because once Solo is gone, and Solo will be gone before 2024 starts. I'm saying this right now. Solo is going to be gone before 2024 starts. And he and Roman are going to have their match at Royal Rumble. That is when you really are going to realize that this story has so many different layers, and it's all built by not just the in-ring capability of the people around them, but by the story that they're driving, that they're going with. And by far, the Bloodline story is number 1 in terms of the best wrestling storyline of all time. You got Rock Austin, you got the Mega Powers, you got Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, you got, there's a lot more. There's probably so many more over the years that you can look into, and they're in the top echelons of wrestling history, but Bloodline is number 1 for this particular reason. There hasn't been a story that really has had these many twisted turns and divides and conquers and trials and tribulations just like this story has. And people are mixed about so many different emotions about this storyline of what is happening, but you gotta look at it like this. You gotta look into every single match that Roman has had, looking at every single match that the Usos have had, and you gotta look at it from a story standpoint than an actual in-ring standpoint. Their in-ring matches are really good for sure. Some of them are really good. Some of them don't really turn out the way that they should. But always look into the story. Always look into what they're trying to tell you, to what they want to show you. And once you realize that, you're really going to be interested in the Bloodline storyline more than ever. Because the in-ring is a bonus. The storytelling is the main juice of everything. So you gotta really taste what they're giving you, and enjoy the final dessert, the final meal at the very end. And I believe this will all end at WrestleMania 40. If it doesn't, then you can really start to question whether this storyline is worth going for or not. But I believe this story ends at 40 in Philadelphia, with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns coming together one more time, and Roman finally realizing he's just the man without anything when it comes to being the Universal Champion. He's finally going to be vulnerable. He's finally going to be weakened. He's not going to have anybody to back him up. He's going to have lost everything by that point. So he lost Sammy. He's lost Jimmy. Lost Jay. He'll lose Solo. And eventually he'll lose Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's going to drop out of this very soon. I'll say before WrestleMania. And then there's just going to be Roman and Cody. And then you got those two. And then you got Jimmy and Jay. They're going to do their thing. And then Solo's going to do his own thing. Solo's going to break away. I think he's going to stay away from the Bloodline. He's going to stay away from the Usos. And he's going to just break into his own little singles career when he leaves the Bloodline. Is he going to win the championship? No, he's not. None of the family is. Because Cody has to be the one. He was the one that said it first, and he needs to be the one that breaks it all together, that brings it all in. Now, I think the way that this all might set up is at some point, Jay is going to probably rely on his own self by this point, and Jimmy's going to really just try his best to just be a thorn in Jay's side for a while. Jimmy and Jay are eventually going to get together again. But for now, this story that they're doing, this twist that they've added, is probably the best twist that you'll ever see. And you should really, really tune in to SmackDown to see where this goes. Now, Roman's not going to be on TV for quite a while, and that's fine. He's been on TV for ever since after WrestleMania. Probably had more TV appearances than he ever probably had in the last several years. But there's a big arc to this storyline, and it's going to continue for as long as it can, up until the start of 2024, where we finally get to that middle sixth inning, top of the sixth, all the way to the ninth inning on April 6th and 7th at WrestleMania 40. I can't wait. That's my take on the storyline. If you have different takes, you can go ahead and comment it down in the comments section. I will be reading, and I want you guys to really look into my Twitter to really think about all of the arcs that I said, and you realize when part 7 happens, you'll realize when part 7 happens, and I'll post it there as well. I'll leave my Twitter down in the link too. Peace and love, everybody. I will see you all soon. The heart for you. And I'm out.